and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. Right. I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve. Have a high pain threshold. That's it. There's a friend of mine who's got a good saying, which is that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Okay, that's generally what happens, because when you first start a company, there's lots of optimism and things are great, and then so happiness at first is high. Then you encounter all sorts of issues, and happiness will steadily decline, and then you'll go through a whole world of hurt. And then eventually, if you succeed, and in most cases you will not succeed, then if you succeed, then after a long time you will finally get back to happiness. People do not think critically enough. I mean, critical thinking is a skill in short supply, where people take too many things they assume too many things to be true without sufficient basis in that belief. It's very important that people closely analyze what is supposed to be true and try to build up. Try to say, let's analyze things from first principles, not by analogy or not by convention. If you assume things are true by convention, which is actually what most people do, then it's difficult to gain insight into how things can be bettered. In any argument or any sort of train of thinking, you want to make sure that the underlying premises are valid and applicable, and then in reaching a conclusion, that the conclusion you're reaching is necessarily driven by the underlying premises and the interconnection between those premises. That may seem like a really simple thing to say, but most people don't do that. So it's really the foundation of rational thought.
If somebody is doing something that is useful to the rest of society, I think that's a good thing. Like, it doesn't have to change the world. Like, if you're doing something that has high value to people, and frankly, even if it's like just a little game, or some improvement in photo sharing or something, if it has a small amount of good for a large number of people, I think that's fine. Like, stuff doesn't need to be changed the world just to be good.
People tend to overweight risk on a personal level. It's one thing if you've got, a mortgage to pay and kids to support, and that if you were to deviate from your job, how are you going to feed your family and pay the rent? And okay, that's understandable. But let's say you're young and you're just coming out of college or coming out of high school or whatever. What do you risk? You're not going to starve. I mean, right. It's really certainly not in any kind of modern economy. It's so easy to earn enough money just to live somewhere and eat food. You could, very easy to do. So I don't know what are they afraid of? They're mostly afraid of failure, I think, But people should be less risk averse when there's not much at risk. You've got to make sure that whatever you're doing is a great product or service. It has to be really great. And I go back to what I was saying earlier, where if you're a new company, unless it's like some new industry or new market, that if it's an untapped market, then you have more ability to. The standard is lower for your product or service. But if you're entering anything where there's an existing marketplace against large entrenched competitors, then your product or service needs to be much better than theirs. It can't be a little bit better, because then you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, and they say, why would you buy it as a consumer? You're always going to buy the trusted brand unless there's a big difference. So a lot of times, entrepreneur will come up with something which is only slightly better. And it can't just be slightly better. It's got to be a lot better.
If you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company.
Constantly seek criticism.
Yeah.
A well thought out critique of whatever you're doing is as valuable as gold. And you should seek that from everyone you can, but particularly your friends. Usually your friends know what's wrong, but they don't want to tell you because they don't want to hurt you. You should take the approach that you're wrong. You know, that you, the entrepreneur, are wrong. Your goal is to be less wrong.
Don't just follow the trend. So you may have heard me say that it's good to think in terms of the physics approach, or first principles, which is, rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine, and you reason up from there. And this is a good way to figure out if something really makes sense, or if it's just what everybody else is doing. It's hard to think that way. You can't think that way about everything. It takes a lot of effort. But if you're trying to do something new, it's the best way to think. And that framework was developed by physicists to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. So it's really a powerful method.